But can we just briefly discuss how this session will go largely? How does this go?
Yeah, basically we'll be first introducing about the framework and and then you can uh, move over with the session.
What is the audience generally interested in such sessions? Why do they come?
They'll be interested in the overview of the framework, like how to use, how it will be beneficial in the hackathon, during the hackathon, and what are the key features that will help them build their project during the hackathon.
Okay, that's
Uh,
the main agenda.
like I saw actually some of the people also tried before the event only how they can build with it, but I guess they ran into some of the difficulties. So if it would be possible, like you can quickly guide how it can ease up their development and pace up their like minimize the development time, that would be great because I saw all the features and I myself tested it out, and I guess they can actually reduce the development time significantly. So if we can focus on that aspect and make it really easy for the new learners to understand, so that would be awesome.
Correct, correct. I get it. And what I would also like to know, learn through this initiative from a product standpoint is that
Mhm.
I would also like feedback of where the developers got stuck when they tried it out, the students as well, so that we can
Actually,
that will be useful for us to collect. So we would like to collect this information so that we can improve their journey as the hackathon approaches, right? We are anyway
definitely.
constantly, we are about to release, I think just a few minutes ago, we did release our latest documentation also. So we've been releasing some new stuff, which was we were updating documentation just now. So, but in any case, I would like to know where people get stuck so that product can be improved from that feedback. Okay,
Yes,
while we
sure,
do
for
the
sure.
yeah, yeah, all right. So see, my goal would be to engage some audience, okay, at least 10 or 12 students who want to uh, build in the hackathon using Godspeed itself, and then they prepare for this journey with us, wherein we also help them, guide them, learn whatever stuff they want to learn, and wherever they get blocked, we help them unblock so that they can make a good project in the hackathon. That's our goal also. All right, so I'll
Yeah,
take them through a
sure.
demo as well. I've prepared a demo. I will show them.
Okay,
Please.
okay,
All
that's
right.
great.
They
So
can ask
Aman will be
questions also.
starting.
Yeah, they can ask questions also. You can ask on their behalf too. Okay. Questions will be nice if I can have questions.
Yeah,
How to do
Yeah,
this, how to do that. Huh?
yeah, this is being live streamed on YouTube, so there will be audience who will be watching this live. Whatever their questions are in the live stream, we'll be reading out loud here.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you. We're good to go then. All right. Thank you.
Sure. So we can start with this.
Yes.
So a huge welcome to the Godspeed System Framework Workshop. I am Samriddhi Sharma and I am Ms. Joy Biswas, are your host for today. This session is specifically designed for Hackbite participants. Godspeed System is a company that offers a fourth generation microservices framework. The Godspeed System Framework empowers developers to build modern microservices applications faster and more efficiently. It provides key features like automatic generation of CRUD APIs and Postman collection, streamlining the development workflow.
We have the incredible Godspeed team here today. Ayush, the founder, he is having a wonderful tech experience of 17 years. He is ready to take you to the wonders of the Godspeed system framework. They will be leading the session, diving deep into the framework's functionalities, answering all your burning questions. My team and I will be monitoring the live chat and feeding your questions directly to Ayush throughout the session. So don't be shy. If something sparks your curiosity, type away in the chat and we'll make sure it gets addressed. Now let's hand over to Ayush to unveil the power of Godspeed System Framework. They are ready to take it away.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you so much for your introduction and organizing this. So may I quickly know the two of you, are you also developers? Are you learning programming?
Yes, sir.
All right, okay. So you have also a fair understanding of what we do in building stuff. Great. So awesome. I look forward to this session and look forward to everybody's questions because no session is enjoyable without good questions. If we have questions, then everybody is engaged much more. But I would just like to take you through a journey of how we do basic things when building an application. Okay. Um, and when building any microservice or even any service that we are building, we'll just take you through basic stuff and how Godspeed makes it easy for us to do that. So, and why is it a good choice for you to use it not just for the hackathon to build your projects, but also to build any projects you build during college, and also to learn a lot of stuff, which will as well help you, getting better employment opportunities too. Because the better knowledge we have about engineering, the more value we can bring to where we go. And the value is respected with good opportunities. So the framework teaches a lot of things if we just follow the best practices that it comes as a part of design of the framework. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, let's straight away jump to play around with things. And all right. Okay, so you guys know Visual Studio Code environment?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
All right. So here is what we'll go through. Okay. So I'll go step by step in what we do when building any service, okay? And the two of you and everybody else who's present, please feel free to stop me any point and ask a question, okay? Just ask me to double click on anything you would like to know on. Yeah, Ayush, can we please double click this as we go forward? All right. Okay. So let's come here. So I'm 17 years, it's big for me, and I'll just give a little introduction. So 17 years, but I'm still pretty hands-on, and I code almost daily, even now, and I love it while also running a company. This is like, being my ikigai. So what I'm taking you is something that I'm developing with lot of love for engineering, and also building a framework to solve the engineer's problem. And as well for anybody, not just engineer, but a student who wants to learn things and do stuff, without a lot of learning. So now, let's talk about any service that we built, right? We talk of microservices. So every microservice, if you look at it, it's an event-driven system. Okay, you you build what? You build REST API calls, correct? आप लोग REST API बनाते हैं, then you build GraphQL APIs, and
Yes.
as right, so we built different kind of API protocols. That's one kind of events. Then there is another kind of events, which is like a WebSocket event or a Kafka event. So these are message bus or WebSocket events which are asynchronous in nature. Okay. Then there are events which are synchronous in nature. In JavaScript world, if we see the callback is an asynchronous event. Okay. So we expose our code, our functions via an events always. Then there are various event sources. Okay. Now I'm quickly taking you through a project scaffolding of Godspeed. Okay. But let me just first show you how to run it, how to install it. Let us first just come to the terminal, focus on the terminal. I'll just show you the commands you need to run. So Godspeed is based on Node.js. Okay. First we install. That's it. You install Godspeed, comes as a command. You can do Godspeed create your project name. Okay. It will go ahead and create your project, and with some sample code. Then if you just go to GitHub on a repository, github.com. Okay, let me just share my whole screen. One second instead of this. All right. Yeah. So if you go to github.com and there's a repo called GS Node templates. We will be sharing you the link. This contains some sample projects for you. Now, this is a project which is a sample LOS project, which is based on a loan origination system. So most of the companies today, many of them, the big companies are fintech companies, giving loans and all sorts of financial stuff, banks as well. So loan is a common part. Everyone takes a loan. So this is just a sample template to play around with what it could mean. Okay, this is the project I have opened up locally out here. All right, this has been built. You can clone this, use this Everything you will need for your hackathon project is already here. You'll just need to turn the knobs a little bit here and there, but everything is made for you. When you do Godspeed Create, you get this standard scaffolding project structure, starting from a package JSON, your compilation of TypeScript, all the setup files, environment variables. Docker file is not there right now, but this is Kubernetes Helm charts. Docker file will come. Your Swagger spec is auto-generated. Your build code is there. Visual Studio plugin settings are there. And most importantly, your source code. The source code also looks like this. So as I was talking about, every service is built on events, right? So you listen on events, whether HTTP, GraphQL, whatever. And there are event sources like your GraphQL server, okay? Or your HTTP server, which could be made on Express, running on port 3000 with whatever JWT authentication authorization. These are event sources, okay? Second is your events. Third is your data sources, which is what data sources basically contains. If you look at these, they contain either some APIs that you access, basically any place where you are giving data, sending data, or receiving data. So it could be an API, it could be a data store. Data store is a database, key value pair, key value store, a NoSQL store, SQL store. A data store can be any place where you store data, okay, and you retrieve data. These are data sources, like AWS API, for example. Okay, AWS is a data source. Axios, if you access API Node.js world, this is Node.js based, right? Is a data source. Kafka, Memcache, if you use memory cache, Prisma, and ORM over databases, or Mongoose, or Salesforce to access Salesforce. These are all data sources. Okay, this is the second part of your project. So it could mean simply setting up your Kafka is like firstly, okay, in order to set your data sources and event sources, they come as very importantly plugins of Godspeed ecosystem. Okay, let's focus back on the terminal and I'll run this command Godspeed plugin add. Okay. Wait a minute. So when you run Godspeed plugin add, okay, so you're developing your project, you choose your data sources. There are already quite a few existing plugins which you can use, like Mongoose. Just put your spacebar, select it. If you want to use emailer, Excel sheet, just for playing around, or Redis, the cache, which we are not using in this project. I'll show Elastic Graph is for access over Elasticsearch, something we've written, and ORM. Memcache has a data source. Then and there are other data sources as well, like Salesforce, so on and so forth. So you can install these data sources and event sources in your project. Okay. And once you've installed these plugins, then all you need to do is we again go to the left side of your project is out here. Okay. You have defined your event sources or data sources. They are coming in types. Now you just need to configure your project. Okay. For example, if you want to run a Node.js Express server, when you write code in Node.js, you import Express server. You write for every request and response, app.use. You write JavaScript functions as middleware. If you want to use JWT, you go search on Google or ChatGPT, get the code for adding JWT, add it. And often it takes lots of trial and error and playing around, right? What if these things are done for you? All you need to do is go configure your system. You should not be, when in a hackathon or even when in a professional job, right? You should be more focused on getting the system working together. That's the job of the engineering team. And what makes any student or an engineer be slow is that, they have to deal with all these things like setting up all of these event sources, data sources, learning integrations, then installing them, making them work. It's a lot of trial and error. If a bug comes, you don't know where is the bug. Is it in my integration of Express server, or is it in adding a plugin, or is it in writing my own business logic? So that means it makes you slow to fix the bugs also. Hence, it makes us a lot of slow. So this is what we're doing at Godspeed, right? There are four main guardrails we follow. The first one is schema-driven development. Second one is configure over code. What you see is configuration of Express server out here. Okay. Third is security, like authentication, authorization, okay, environment variables, encryption. Then fourth one is decoupled architecture. Whether you listen on Express or you listen on GraphQL, your code will be same. The functions that run behind, which we'll see now in Godspeed. So here what I'm doing is, let's go first with event sources. This is an event source, type Express. To get started, I'll just go with the default settings that you get in the project. If you want to use JWT authentication, just go set up your secret in your environment file. Okay, out here, whatever is being asked, and all your configurations which are being accessed are already defined here for you to get started. You can copy code from this project. We already have every setting. Okay. So JWT secrets, these are reading from your environment variables. It's a security practice everybody follows. You should never have a password in your code or a secret. Okay. Then, so things are configured. This is the default configuration of the project. Coming back. So here I've configured my Express. Okay. I've given my secrets, which we just saw. Authentication, then authorization. If you want an API to be accessed only by admin or just by manager, all your API calls, whether from GraphQL or HTTP, as we'll see, will give you generic inputs object. Okay, it's all documented. Inputs has 5 things basically. It's in these TypeScript examples I will show you. You can write your code in TypeScript. Okay, and as well YAML also. We support that. But all your project configurations are in YAML. So authorization is also here in case you need this. Then this is for validations. So schema-driven development, the first guardrail I talked about. We must always have a single source of truth in our code. And most of the times for CRUD apps, it is our schema of the database. Okay. The schema of the database must just generate my code to do the CRUD on the database. It must also generate my Swagger spec. It must also generate my GraphQL schema. And it must also from there generate Postman collection or whatever, even some basic test cases that I want to generate for the API. It should be able to do that based on schema, even run a mock server. So schema driven development is very important. And in the end of it, we have our single place of configuration of everything. For example, in this app, there's a Prisma file. Prisma is being used as a plugin. We have designed the whole schema of our tables here. Okay. So this is my DB. You run a command called Godspeed Gen CRUD API. And it will ask you which data source, which Prisma file you want to generate schema of. Okay, then you can simply select your Prisma file. It will run the command. And then if you go on the left side, it has already generated the events. I have not shown you the events yet. Let me show you of all my REST API, CRUD, over user and loan application, the 2 tables we saw. Okay, this is what it looks like. Now we talked of event sources like HTTP, right? Just now I'm revising HTTP we talked about. Now look at GraphQL. We use Apollo GraphQL plugin. Okay, it looks just the same as HTTP, nothing different. Okay, you see the beauty that you learn only one way of doing things. But you can integrate Apollo GraphQL, you can integrate Express, even Fastify plugin is there. Same configuration will work across these plugins. You learn once, apply everywhere. So with this, event sources are configured in your project. Okay, if you don't want anything, just comment it out. Okay, that's it. And to run the project, you do Godspeed serve. Okay, and then coming back to the CRUD API, which is generated. So now let's look at the event definition. You have these folders, data sources, events, event sources. We talked about these 3 so far. Okay. Then functions, which has all functions of your project. These are the 3 main. Then definitions are basically, when I come to events, we'll talk of definitions. This is again, the software development follows a standard of JSON schema and Swagger spec for defining your events. Okay, that also has a concept called definitions, where you define the schema of all entities in your API. That's the right practice to be followed. Now the benefits of defining your schemas very tightly is that you can assure that you can make sure only the right kind of input gets into your application, and you are returning only the promised output which you promised. You are not returning any other kind of output. Okay, if you are returning something else, you will yourself say, hey, I'm sorry, I cannot return you the right response. There's an internal server error. Okay, so this is benefit of schema driven development. So here is a schema of an event in Godspeed. It's all YAML files in events. Okay, these are all events in YAML files. Now these events could be from HTTP, GraphQL, or both. Okay, let me just show you quickly. From this project, I have generated the whole API schema. It will come in your folder in this Swagger spec. Plus, if you go to http.yaml, I'm running my API docs. Here, the docs folder is where your Swagger spec information is there. This is my endpoint /API docs. This is the information I want to put in Swagger, my servers. Now, this is all showing here. Localhost 3000 API docs is where my project is opened. This is the information I put there. My servers, I had put JWT authentication on, so I will need authorization. I've already set a JWT token here. Okay. So now this is my Swagger, which has been just rendered from my project. After running generate CRUD API, all these APIs basic are created. Okay. Now I go maybe create a user. It required not a single line of code right now, only YAML file configurations, okay? And running command lines. My whole CRUD API is done. Let's say, let's just create a PAN entry, a new user with a PAN number, okay? Okay, I'm getting unauthorized because something wrong with my token generation. So maybe let me do one thing. Let me just show you how quickly we can remove the token or get
Sorry to interrupt you, sir, but we just got one question in our live chat. And it's what about auth? Can we have that too?
This is the auth I'm talking about, right? That's why it gave unauthorized, no?
Sir, about OAuth. So, like if we want to set up Google OAuth.
Correct. I will come to that. For that, you can create your own plugin. Right now, our plugin, by the way, has a pull request. You can have a look at it, where you will find OAuth 2 integrated already. It's a plugin-based ecosystem, so you can actually copy paste that code, and you can add OAuth 2 or any other authentication you want to add. Okay, so let me just show you actually, since we are on to it. So all the event sources and data sources I showed you. Okay, these are plugins. Plugins are publicly in GS plugins repo. I'm just opening the repo here, and let me just show you the code. So if you ever want to do anything on Godspeed, you have complete freedom, and you can craft your own plugins. Connect any API, have your plugin. We are even happy to take your plugins pull requests if you make something useful for the community. This is the plugins repo. You go to plugins. These are all plugins we support. The list is here. Okay. All right. Now, if you ask the question that in Express, we have Express and Fastify both. Okay. That I go to Express and I want to add OAuth 2, correct? So Express works with middleware, right? So this is an event source of Express that we made. You can copy this code into your own project and start customizing the plugin. So you just need to implement GS event source. It has an init client where you initiate your event source. Here I'm initiating the apps Express server. Okay. I can use any middleware I want. Here I'm using JWT. You can it's passport.js, right? It supports OAuth 2 also. In fact, if you go to our repo, you will find the OAuth 2 branch. It's a pull request. Just go ahead, copy paste that. You have your OAuth 2 running. You may need to tweak things a little bit here and there. I hope it answers the question.
Yeah, it answers the question, and he's like writing out, got to know about something new today. So.
Correct. See, what this framework does, it makes you solution designers. Okay. There is one thing which is just called a full stack application developer. Okay. Engineering is much more to that. It's a craft. When you are building a software, it must have a touch of excellence in how you've done things. So here, Godspeed gives us the opportunity to firstly learn what are the best practices to follow. Okay, the guardrails. Their videos are on our channel. Secondly, it helps us easily apply these things. Third, for those of us who want to take now more challenging stuff, right, or well-designed stuff, you can write your own plugins. And now you work on your college projects, you work on maybe freelancing projects, okay? Whatever you do, just for fun also. You can reuse your plugins that you've created or contribute back to community, all right? And then you can be much faster in building things up. See, in the end, engineering is about solving problem, and the world is moving towards a pace where, even AI is coming, right? So what is important is to be able to solve problems fast by knowing the concepts. So you can build your plugins with the best concepts you want. Prisma schema. You can start your project with Prisma data source. All right. You create your Prisma file. You create your Prisma client. There's a getting started documentation. Go there, create your schema for your project, run that command, gen CRUD API. After that, your events of lending service DB are created. And then your functions of com biz lending service DB. This is created for you. Create, read, delete, update, search, get. You can start customizing. Now what you see here, that the functions generated are in YAML files. Okay. So this is the CRUD API. When you by default, you generate a CRUD API. Then it comes in YAML files. But YAML is an option in Godspeed. You can also write TypeScript code. Okay. So this is some sample code in TypeScript. So here I'm creating something. Okay. If it's again Prisma, what does Prisma do? You can use MongoDB, Postgres, MySQL. You can connect with all of them. And you can do CRUD very easily using Prisma. Maybe some of you know Mongoose. We have a very easy way to set up Mongoose. You just need, it's very easy, it's documented. You can go to plugin page of Mongoose, you will find everything you need, how to use it. After that, you can write TypeScript code, okay? And, but at least for CRUD, most of the stuff you need will be done by this code itself. The YAML code does a lot of stuff which gets generated for you. In TypeScript, if you do the same thing, ignore these comments. If in TypeScript, if you do the same thing, it will be much more code. For example, create.ts. Okay. Here I'm not doing caching. I'm not logging anything. All right. I'm not doing anything else. This is create.yaml. Okay. Here I'm calling the same API. Okay. So all data sources you declare when you generate CRUD API, they will be available in data source. So data source dot lending service DB dot loan application dot create. The same code in TypeScript. I imported the client from the context object, which you get in all your TypeScript functions, which you have to export, okay, and your arguments. Then you basically do the same thing. I'm doing loan application dot create, and I'm passing arguments. The same thing I've expressed in YAML, okay. Now YAML supports certain more things right now, like utilities which are low code. So when you're quickly prototyping, you want to log. You want to log before running the task. You want to log after running the task. Plus you want beautiful logs, which tell you exactly where what is happening. For example, if you see here, there's a log statement. Okay. There's a nice timestamp, which you can customize based on, in a setting. I'll show you. These are all attributes you can put in logs. And now server has started. Let's see the logs when you hit an API. Okay. Let's actually now, let me show you on GraphQL. So if you see the same CRUD event, right? Okay, but yeah, on this function, right? Caching is an advanced feature. I will skip this for now, but if you are interested, caching is basically cache is a place which gives you faster read performance of your data. Okay, so people use DB like Postgres, MongoDB for storing data, permanent storage, but they use cache for faster retrieval of data. Okay, so you can use caching along with your DB queries. All you need to do is add caching. After my DB, this is create, right? I create a loan application. This is the key. Put it in the cache. Cache by default I've set a cache already. You can give Redis cache, in memory cache, whichever cache you want, and that's it. Framework will start caching it. Then when you get this, retrieve this. See, I'm doing loan application dot find one. Okay, by ID, I'm finding loan application. So here I'm saying before you call the database, look in the cache, please. That's it. So my application can scale much better now with the cache. All right. These things are easily done by the framework itself. Now let's run something on GraphQL. Okay.
Sorry to interrupt you once again, but we have a question from the audience in the live stream.
Mhm.
Uh, is there support for Drizzle or other ORMs?
You can write your own plugins like I talked about. Okay. So in short, no. The ORM he asked about, it's not there. Right now we support Mongoose, Prisma. And Elastic Graph is one we have made on our own. Then Redis, let me just show you, right? Let me show that person again. Some of these are event source, some of them are data source on the left side. All right. Let us zoom in. Okay. AWS, Axios for API connection. Ignore DynamoDB as a data source. You have full AWS through the AWS data source. Okay. So, and then you have Fastif. These are event sources. And you have Mongoose, Memory Cache, Redis, Prisma, and Salesforce as well. So once you start looking into these code, right, like I showed, you will be able to write your own data source easily. Just go to our plugins repo. You can connect any API, any database. There's a whole documentation on how to do it. There's also videos to answer that question. All right. You can check that out. Where was I? All right. So now we generated the CRUD API, right? Long story. We are moving. I'm going on tangents also, but let's come back to the main thread. What we'll do in hackathon. Once our API is created in Swagger, okay? Our Swagger spec is up. If you want to run GraphQL also, same API you see. CRUD API is available on GraphQL. Okay, let's run this. So here it's working. All right. Same. And your authentication authorization is also working. You only configured it. Invalid authentication. Similarly, here also all the API is created for you. All right. So one is creating CRUD API will be super fast. Now you want to write your custom API data source integrations. You go to data sources directory, create your own TS file. Like maybe I think you mentioned some other ORM, right? So that ORM will have a TS file there, which you will use. And all you need to do is implement some interfaces in those TS files and you have your data sources. You can check the existing data sources which have been made, how they work. Okay, and you can then make your own. Any other question?
Yes, like out of curiosity, uh, I want to ask, does CRUD API handles large data sets efficiently?
Which API? CRUD
CRUD
API.
API. Yeah.
Correct. That's a very good question. So see, it's the data sets, the large data sets are handled by the database or the data store, right? Not your microservice Node.js code. That's the job of the data store. If you set up MongoDB, your cluster needs to handle the data set. Okay. When it comes to your Node.js or Java, whichever language you are writing your service in, there the scalability is more in other things that you do. Okay. These two things work together, your database and your code in your microservice. For example, for scalability, you do caching, which I was showing. Correct. By
Yes.
caching, you can give higher query throughput. For scalability, apart from database, right? You can caching really helps you a lot, right? Second thing is index your data in your database. Create proper indexes which you will search on later. You need to set all of those things which you can do in Prisma, right? You define your IDs properly. You define what you will be searching on, what is unique, what is not, so that when you search on them, it is fast. If it is encrypted, you say it is encrypted. So this we have to set, okay? So for performance, you use caching. Is very useful. And other thing is ORM. ORM is another layer which adds to the whole throughput of request. So Prisma is not the fastest ORM out there. Okay, Prisma is very developer friendly. It's great for small projects. Okay, but when you really need to have, you're very particular about scale. okay, which is in very few projects. You are so particular about scale. Is then in that case, you may use other plugins, write your own plugins for SQLize, type ORM, use whatever you want. So these plugins, and over time, even we'll be building plugins. But I would love to see if anybody from the community here also can come up with a plugin on any of these data sources. That will be something amazing. And we'll definitely reward that in some way as well. So, okay, that's my
That's
answer
great.
on that. Correct. So now what we saw so far is how to generate a CRUD API, okay? So, but you can create your own code also. How do you do that? You first create an event, assuming your data sources are set. Kafka, all of these, AWS if you are using, just need to define which services of AWS you want to use, okay? Then Kafka, you set up Kafka data source YAML file. KYC, let's say, is another API you use, right? This is an important data source. It's an Axios API call, base URL. Then if you want to print curl statements of all your logs, you say curlyfied logs true, good for debugging. Then authentication, how will you authenticate to this API? You need headers, right? Typically, when you write Node.js code, you will put a try catch in every Axios API call. This is how your code will look like. So authentication function is mybank.authn. Let me show you the function. So this function is authenticating the API, okay, of mybank. It's getting the access tokens headers, and then it is refreshing every time the status code of bank's response is 401. It means user is unauthorized. Then it goes and it refreshes the token written in this function, mybank.authn. So if you go to mybank.authn.ts, this is a typical TypeScript code when you write. Okay. So when you write TypeScript, here you are calling an API. First, just check all the imports you have to do, initializations you do. Your real logic is hidden in between all of these things. So much boilerplate. But this is the real juice of what you're doing, right? This
Yes.
YAML allows us to just express on that. Now, typically when we write Node.js code, you put a try catch, right? Then you check in out here, what is the error? Is it 401? Then you will yourself write the code to authenticate again, right? Or is it internal server error? Should I retry? Okay, retry is another important thing. Let's say you are accessing an API, it gives a response internal server error. Then you want to retry, either a constant retry, 5 attempts, exponential retry, random retries. So then these things can be configured when accessing APIs out there. So this project uses these data sources. Okay. Now, so when you write your own new function, first you start with an event. See, functions you can write as well in functions folder. But let's say you want to create an API. I start from there, health check. You define your HTTP post endpoint. Okay. If you want on GraphQL also, okay, you can write your own like gRPC as well. Okay. So then authentication, if you don't want to authenticate, say authent false, auth false. Okay. This is the function to run. This is JSON schema, Swagger spec. Okay, the events in Godspeed follow JSON schema standard. We are extending JSON schema in Swagger spec. So the request body of your Swagger spec, if you ever looked into Swagger 3, this is the request body object. Just follow the standard, learn online. You are telling what do I expect in body of my post call to health. Okay. Then this is a response. What will I give in response? When the status code will be 200, I'll give this in response. If I have headers, query, params, they all go in params. For example, this is out here. Params. This is in path, this is in headers, so on and so forth. Okay. So you give a JSON schema, your application will start getting validated. So health check, then you have written your function. Your function should not be doing validation of your inputs, that email is present or not. Okay, that is done by the schema itself. Then second in functions, you write this function health check. This is the one we are using now, health dot check fn. I go to health check. There's even a TypeScript we have kept for example. You can access this TypeScript health check, which does the same thing. You'll be able to compare between TypeScript and YAML. This is YAML. What are we doing? Okay, this is health check ID. Tasks, I can run multiple tasks. This is an array in YAML. This task has this ID. I'm just doing health check. Okay. I'm simply returning code 200 and this is my data. Okay. This has got nothing to do with express response.send body, response.status. Tomorrow in your project, if you want to replace express with fastify, which is faster than express, you will have to change your entire code. But in this way, you have decoupled by the way of your schema, validations and authentication authorization are decoupled from your code, and your functions return only the data and the code. Same thing in TypeScript. I'm returning data and code. Both of these give same example, health check. This project is there for you. Just clone it, run it, name Godspeed, hello Godspeed. Okay. If you remove the name, it should give validation error, bad request. Okay. It is telling request validation fail must have property name. So this ways you are accepting certain input, you can enforce that. Okay. So this is, then you can write your own code. So when you're in TypeScript, most of you know TypeScript or JavaScript. This can be just JavaScript. TypeScript is but JavaScript, right? So without the types. So in types, basically in TypeScript, there's a context object. Just ignore the red lines here. There must be some TypeScript error. The beauty of TypeScript is you work with types, right? It will throw you errors. This type is not assignable here and there. So you may want to work with TypeScript. Then when an API or an event comes, event could even come from Kafka, right? For example, in this particular event here, sorry, this event is even from Kafka, dbsync, kafka.topic.group ID, okay? So whenever there's an event, all the data of the event, your inputs is available in inputs object. Inputs data, your params, body, query, user, headers. Whatever you get in HTTP GraphQL, in case of Kafka, you get body, okay? You have a logger already set up, which prints beautifully, which I showed you before. When you're logging, you can print all these attributes. We follow open telemetry standard. Most of you would have never heard of it, but it's the future of how logging, monitoring, and tracing is done. Okay, learn open telemetry. So this is how developer sees on localhost, but when it runs on the server, this will be highly searchable. For example, you said my event type was health check, and you can even add anything else out here that you want to do. Then outputs is outputs of all the functions that have run previously. Functions has all the functions that are in your project. Data sources has all the data sources you loaded. Okay. So now, if you see, I've returned data and I can use these data sources. This is just a hello world kind of an example. Okay. All of these TypeScript code in your functions examples are also here. Just play around with this project. Everything you need for hackathon is mostly here. Okay, your logs, caching, simple CRUD is generated. Whatever else is not generated in your CRUD, automatically copy paste from here if you need this. Otherwise, don't use it. So yeah, this is how you quickly create a project, run a project with lots of best practices. All right, now I can open up to questions. We have 4 minutes remaining.
Sure. Yesterday I was going through the documentation and I had this question in my mind. If the CRUD API requires authentication or authorization, how does caching integrate with the Godspeed authentication mechanism to provide necessary credentials for API calls?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, the last part? How does Godspeed?
If the CRUD API requires authentication, how does caching integrate with the Godspeed authentication mechanism to provide necessary credentials for API calls?
Caching.
Yeah.
How do you integrate with the caching API?
Yeah.
Giving credentials to the API. Okay, this is how you do it. Go to Redis plugin, okay? Let me show you. Let's see. This is, I'm in Godspeed System /docs. We've just updated the documentation here. Let's go to plugins and then search for Redis. Redis as data source. Redis is an example where you require authentication. Okay, it could be any caching that you use. This is how you set up Redis. You saw other YAML files, no? Like Prisma dot what all the other YAML files. No, this is redis.yaml, just like Axios. You'll say type Redis, URL is this. Here you have login password. Whichever cache you use will have its own way of having an authentication system. Okay. Most times it is just the URL. Otherwise, if there's another strategy to authenticate, you can just implement that by writing your own data source. That's the beauty of Godspeed. Here in this project, you still write the data source, but you do it in a proper way. Tomorrow, you remove that data source with something else, replace it, your rest of code can remain same. Plus, when you have bugs, okay, you immediately know the bug is an integration of my data source layer or is it my business logic. Now just check out, for example, this particular API, health check, or let me show you a complex flow. In loan application journey, a user applies for a loan. Okay, what do we do in the whole journey? Just look at IDs. You fetch loan offers based on PAN card. You verify the KYC details, upload documents to AWS S3. KYC is by accessing another API which does KYC. Have you guys ever done KYC?
Yes, sir.
Anna? Then you create loan account in the bank via bank API. Then you create loan account in your own loan management system. Then you publish it to Kafka that, hey, we've got a new loan. Then any consumer who's listening on that event can act on it, right? Kafka events. This project also shows you how to listen on Kafka events, Kafka to DB. I'm listening on Kafka, okay? Then I can do anything, like I can save the loan in database as well, okay? So this is what you do there. Now look at this. We are fetching a database call. Rule engine is an API, sorry, a data source, API data source. I'm doing a post on this URL. This is data I'm sending, bank name, account number, interest, whatever. Then I'm not writing code of validation out here. I'm not checking status code is 400, refresh the token. I've already done that when setting the data source. So when you create your own caching data source also, you can not only authenticate to it, it's in your control, but as well, you can basically provide any kind of feature on top of it because you are the creator of that plugin. Whatever configuration you put in your plugin, right? You write all this TypeScript code as your plugin, no? It has main two functions. Init my client, the ORM or the client to the cache. You simply initialize your cache client. And after that, you execute. Whenever cache functions are executed, you simply call them. It's your native cache API. You can do whatever you want here. Okay. So this is how you integrate with cache. This is a sample in memory cache I have in this project right now. But yes, you can integrate any other caches also. Any other question?
Hello, sir. I am Bhavik Agarwal. So after going through last 20 or 25 minutes, I can see that there is a big role of plugins in this. And you said, as you said, that we can also create our own plugins. So can you just like give 2 minutes on this, like how we can proceed creating our own plugins?
Okay.
And I think there are two types of plugins we have, like one is event source and one is data source, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. So there is, let me show you. There's this page. If you go to custom plugins, right? If you go to event sources, create event source plugin. Okay, there's a video also. All right. There's link to the repository also. Okay, so you can just go here. If you want to just see quickly, there's a command called Godspeed plugin create. Let me just try it if it's working right now. Actually, I have a local developer setup on my machine, but let me just test. Godspeed plugin, I think create or something. Let us just see. Okay, Godspeed. This is ZSH. Let me go to bash. Godspeed plugin. It must be create. Let's just check. Godspeed plugin. Add remove. I think there's another way to create this plugin. Let me just go ahead.
So it's Yo Godspeed dash plugin.
Correct. Yes, Yo plugin add. Correct. Yeah. So there are steps out here. Okay. You do Yo plugin add. It will create a plugin scaffolding. Select data source, event source. What do you want? Okay. It will create the basic file for you like this data source. Now you can just go and do stuff within it. Okay. For reference, you have our existing data source code, no, which you can see. All right. You can see our event source also. Then you can learn from it and you can connect any kind of data source and event source after that.
Okay, so all these plugins that are already in there have their code also open source, right?
Everything is out here. Okay. Okay.
Okay,
Technically speaking, this is not open source. This is shared source. The
shared
code is
source.
there on GitHub. It is free for students. It is free for non-commercial use. Okay. It is paid for commercial use.
Okay,
All right. So that's the license we have. And actually, you can check on YouTube. If you go to our channel, there's even a talk. If you go to our blog, we have even shared our thought that why, by the way, I also blog on 10x Engineering. You guys can follow me on LinkedIn or come to our blog. You can subscribe to my newsletter, weekly letter. I talk of 10x Engineering. How can we become 10x engineer? It's a for community free series. All right. Then there are blogs also. You can go to our blogs, check the dark side of FOSS. Matlab, that's a talk actually I've taken in the open source meetups also. There's a dark side to using FOSS software where developers don't get paid fairly for their work.
yeah,
Okay. So at Godspeed, we believe developers have the right to ask for money also. We shouldn't expect everything for free in the world. But developers should be like Robin Hoods also, engineers. They should give their code for free to people who are not using it to make money. Then we don't charge them money also. Okay. If they're students learning something, give it for free. No problem. If you're a startup, you're growing, take it for free for 5 developers. No problem. But when you're big enough, you have funding, you have revenues, you're making money, then you should pay for the code you use. And that's the kind of vision that I have as well, right? That you will see in our blog post as well a little bit. We've written that FOSS from free to fair. This post talks about our vision. Okay. Open source projects. If you go to all open source projects on internet, there's many dark sides. One of them is they will launch a free version. Okay. When they become popular, there comes a paid version after that. So often free version is actually the poor brother, the small brother. The big fat brother is the paid version, right? We have one version for all. Let the people who need it use it for free. That's what we're following. So,
okay,
and at same time, we want to encourage developers and community to come and contribute to this. So tomorrow, if you create a plugin, imagine we are a marketplace. Okay.
okay,
Your plugin is used by people. Tomorrow there can be blockchain based systems, many systems. If we see the future 5 years from now, okay, then developers can monetize when their code runs anywhere. That can be computed. That where is this plugins installed? Is it being used in a project? Right now, if you go to npm.js, the website, you will see so many projects looking for funding. If you go to npmjs.com, no. So these are open source projects looking for funding. So what we want is to basically start charging for code and then distribute it open source. As well, give back to our contributors who make plugins for us, who contribute to Godspeed. It's in spirit as good as open source. But since we cannot technically call it open source because that is decided by FSF and OSI. Okay, that's why Elasticsearch, MongoDB, Redis, they have all gone to shared source license. There are no more open source software. They call it source available license. Okay, so this is how it is.
okay,
Hmm.
okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
That's
Any other
really
questions?
One last question from the audience. Like, they're really curious to know that how much time did you take to develop this entire wonderful platform?
It has taken 17 years. All the learnings that I had from this journey, right? And so many other gifted people I met, I got ideas from them also. So many projects we did. And but there's one ORM called Elastic or Elasticsearch, which I built between 2015 to 18, and which is still used. And the Godspeed, what you see today, we've been working since 2022. So there was a previous version one, which is already used by Pine Labs and some other companies. So Pine Labs, Pine Labs, you pay credit card, debit card, there's a machine. in many merchant stores. There's a Pine Labs company machine. Okay. So they are our clients. They use Godspeed. And that we built on previous version, the version 1. So 2 comes with all the learnings from all 17 years plus the previous version we built. And the whole idea is to, give engineers this toolkit, right? Let's imagine you are makers of not just cars, but Ferraris, Lamborghinis. You want to build software of that standard, right? And you want to be like this DC, of company DC, which customizes cars, Dilip Chabria.
Yeah.
Okay, you need that. Our so that anybody together to share together to earn together. That's the long-term vision. That's why these experiments with you is also very important with students, college communities, all right, where because you are the future of the world, right? So we need to empower you. So that's one of the visions that also behind, want to encourage students to become good engineers and good human beings, succeed in their career and life. So you can follow my blog and you'll get to know more things in 10x engineering. Apart from it, I hope that everyone enjoyed the session. And yeah, I look forward to your questions. Please message us on Discord anytime you have any questions. Okay, we are all available. I am often available to everybody. And I promise you that we will help you out in your journey, whatever you need.